Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, 25 years, serial tech entrepreneur with 30 ventures under my belt, author and CEO of Sonatify Technology. Today, we are joined by Kaj Pedersen out of Bellevue, Washington. Kaj has been an engineering professional. He's been a CEO, a management consultant, a COO, and a CTO. This is going to be a fun conversation. Kaj, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Steve. Happy to be here.
Please tell our audience a little bit about the journey of your career and what's led you to where you are today.
Certainly. So I think the best way to describe it is I am a startup junkie. I started learning about startups when I first came out to the US. I got the opportunity to be in a company that was really in its early stages of growth, and that just was extraordinarily appealing to me. And as a result, I ended up in my first startup, which was Quote.com, first financial services website on the internet doing real-time streaming news, quotes, and TV, which then led to Lycos. So I got into search, and then from search, I went into medical devices into healthcare, etc. And the underlying theme, obviously, and where I am here today at AstrumU, is being involved in organizations where there's transformational technology and also really related around data. And so my experience has always been startups that are looking at solving hard problems, specifically where it comes to data at scale.
I love it. Now, you've worn many hats, Kaj. COO, CEO, consultant, CTO. How have those roles shaped how you lead today as a CTO?
I think fundamentally, I've always seen myself as an operator. And what that basically means is I like working with strategy and then figuring out how to translate that into action. And so those roles have given me insights and perspectives that allow me to think about the challenge or the opportunity that's ahead of me. And then how does that actually turn into actual results using people, using the technologies, using the capabilities, but also doing it with an understanding of what the business is about and really thinking about the business side of things, particularly in terms of cost, and then ultimately how that can translate into the top line when you build a product that needs to be sold.
I love it. You have a unique background, Kaj. Now, how long has it been since you've been an engineer on keyboards doing actual coding?
It's been a while.
All right. I was going to say your experience is so well-rounded. I was guessing that you probably hadn't had hands on a keyboard doing actual coding.
It's the last time I think I did any real coding was probably it's over 10 years, if I'm being honest.
And coding years are like dog years, so you got to times it by 7.
That's right. And I mean, I spent a lot of my early career as an engineer, software engineer, working with code for a long time, and I got a good appreciation of how to design software. And I think that's the important thing, is that you think about software in the context of, well, how do you design it? And you have to think about it also in the context of the physics. And I think a lot of people forget that software, at the end of the day, yes, you can build your MVP, and yes, it can look really nice and it can look really pretty, but now you have to scale it. Now you've got to make it work for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions.
So you mean that vibe coding quick MVP you get up isn't going to scale?
Oh, don't we all love that tech debt tax?
Well, Kaj, tell us about your company, AstrumU.
So AstrumU is uniquely focused on building a data platform in the skills measurement space. And what we're trying to do, and this is where the side of it is we want to collect an understanding of an individual and the verified skills that they have, both the durable skills, but also the hard skills, and use that as a way of understanding where the gap is between a role or their educational needs to close in on an opportunity. So it's really about economic mobility for your career. And if we can understand
that's amazing. I've actually never heard of a company with a focus like this.
It's a hard problem, and we've built a platform that enables us to take data from disparate data sources, organize it around individuals, and then use that to drive recommendations for learning or career. And the whole idea is that we work with enterprises so they can embed those outputs back into their workflow rather than us delivering them another app.
Fantastic. Now, you're a self-proclaimed startup junkie, which I'm in the same boat as you. I've had 30 ventures, and the common theme was I always build custom software to make it operate smoother, to have a unique client experience. But I'm not a developer. I had one COBOL class in college and I cheated my way through it. And that also shows my age if I had a COBOL class in college. But how did you land as CTO of AstrumU?
So actually, it was a confluence of events. Adam Ray, who's the CEO here, asked me back in 2017 if I'd come and join him as a founding CTO. And at the time, I was already engaged in. I was in the middle of winding up a business and selling it to another business, and then I was going to be part of that business and end up running their global operations. So I was already committed. So I said, no, I can't do that. But in 2019, as I was coming to the end of that commitment, Adam reached out again and he asked if I'd be willing to come on board. And we've been talking about working with each other for many years. Our paths crisscross in many different ways. And so this was the opportunity. And I said, sure, I'll come and join you. And I joined him in June 2019, if memory serves me correctly.
Fantastic. And so really you utilize your network there and stay connected. CTO is a tough job. The lifespan of CTOs over the past couple of years, as volatile as the tech market's been, has been like 18 months. And, we all know you're not going to get a job by clicking on a job post.
That's great.
It's about your network. So I appreciate you sharing that and how you kept continual communication with your network to make sure to open up the next opportunity. I love it.
It's the single most important thing you can do is to stay connected with people. But the other single most important thing is to also know how to give back, right? So the first is not to take, but to always find ways to give back to the network and always find ways to help those around you. And people will remember that. And then when the time comes and you need to have that conversation where you're looking for support from your network, you find that it will respond in kind.
Great point and great advice for listeners out there, and very well said. Kai, tell us about some projects you're working on right now.
Well, right now we're working on, actually, we're sort of optimizing our end-to-end delivery around a concept called the AstrumU Labs. And the reason why we're building the AstrumU Labs is when you talk to people about data platforms, it's very hard for them to visualize what does that actually mean. And you say, well, I pull in your data from over here and we kind of process it. And there's a little bit of magic with the guy behind the curtain, and then we'll give you your results. Of course, that doesn't sell as well as we'd like it to sell. So what we've created is stories through our AstrumU Labs, which allows us to show how our product's working, how we pull data in, how it's processed, what the results look like against a learner profile. And then we've even, we're in the process of also visualizing what the knowledge graph actually looks like and how it works and operates as we acquire skills around those individuals. And so this then engages our clients in a way that they can actually say, oh, I get what you're doing now, and I can see what the power of it is. And then we can start to have conversations with them about what use case would this apply for you. And because they have that ability to see it in action, and they can then start to work with it through our API front ends, we can actually create points of engagement that have become research for us, so we can improve the product and the back end, particularly the platform. But it also creates pathways for our customers' understanding and helps us, in a view, shorten the sales cycle.
That, and very well put. And, everybody out there, in order to take the most use of AI, what does it all start with? You have to have a good data platform, a good data warehouse. You have to have data consistency. You have to have data governance. And tech leaders know this, and it's really hard to get an entire organization to do it. And the visual approach of what you're talking about and how the data is used sounds like a smart approach to those building blocks.
Yeah, it's something that we've been working towards. We're finally in a position where we can actually do that now. I think, and you highlighted a whole series of things that need to happen before you can have good AI. The issue with AI that a lot of people, through their excitement, haven't really grokked onto yet is data, and it's the quality of data. And so you have to have this idea of how do you capture the data? How do you comprehend the data? How do you then deliver that data so it can be consumed correctly? And actually, to your other point, governance, you have to have that compliance piece, right? And the compliance is probably the most critical aspect of it, because that then determines how you drive quality and ownership across the data assets. And I call that the 4 C's, by the way, just because I like
The four C's, that is a good one. And as amazing as all the advancements in AI that we continue to see in all aspects of engineering and business and personal, as the data sources specific to your company get better and better and more consistent, that's really when I think we'll really be able to see the power of it.
I agree. And that's when we start to get into the realm of trusted data. And that actually is also when I think agents become really valuable. Because right now, people are still don't really trust it. And there's good reason for that, because the data isn't really there to support it well enough. But I think with all this interest and with all of this drive, and more importantly, enterprises starting to realize the value from the workflow processing side, they will start to think about their own data governance. And so I'm optimistic about the future. It may take a little while to get there, but I'm optimistic about how we manage and handle our data going forward.
I agree. Let's switch gears. Talk to us about your engineering team. What does it look like? Size, structure, working model?
Yeah, so we have Agile XP. And we believe in the idea that the best decisions are made by the team as long as they understand the key priorities and what's expected in terms of the deliverables, and then you let the team own that. So Agile XP is a really great way for enabling that, creating those communications, but also for driving the quality, right? So there's this test-driven development mindset, there's paired programming, and there's this option where people are learning from each other, so you kind of share the ownership across the team. We structure it around engineers, and we structure around DevSecOps, data scientists as well. And currently our team is around, I believe we're at 18 people, which is a mix of engineers, data scientists, and DevSecOps. And that
looks like you're in a formal office. Are you guys in office, hybrid, remote?
I've been a big fan of being in office. Even after I didn't subscribe to the popular view that everything was going to go remote. From a free market perspective, that was never going to work, because small businesses need people to be in the cities. The cities can only operate if you're creating work. So as soon as we could, we brought people back. We are in a hybrid model, though. It is 3 days in, 2 days out. The reason why actually is productivity. I figured out, looking at the calendar, that the first 2 days of the week, people are busy meeting and sorting things out. The Wednesdays when they're really actually knuckling down and doing work. Thursday is when everybody sort of gets together to say, okay, where we're at, what do we need to do, and so on. And then Friday, because we live in the Northwest, that it's horrible to have people commute back and forth on a Friday, especially in the summer here. So we'd like people to at least be closer to home.
So is your entire engineering team located in the Seattle, Washington area?
They're all located here, and they've been coming in. And the reason why is it creates collaboration. It creates that connective tissue, because software is a team sport. It's not the lone wolf model that everyone sort of glamorizes. The reality is it only happens because you bring people together of mixed abilities and mixed skill sets, and they, working together, can actually deliver the magic.
Do you find it's harder to find the talent you're looking for since you're solely looking in a physical proximity to your office?
There was a time where that was the case. I think not so much now, but I was never one just to sort of hire for the sake of hiring. I was always, let's make sure we hire for the right reasons. And so we have this hiring principle here, which we call the 3 C's. You'll see I got...
you got a lot of C's.
Yeah. So it's culture, capacity to master, and capabilities. Culture is around the values and the ethos that we want to build within the team. Capacity to master is this ability to adapt and change and learn constantly, which is what you have to do in the technology space. And then the third one is the capabilities you have today. Will they suffice for the role that we're looking for right now? Understanding that the first 2 are probably the drivers for your success. And so we hire people on that basis, and we train everybody in the engineering organization and the rest of the organization to actually be a part of the hiring process. We don't delegate, we don't send it out. And we're very clear up front. We say, look, this isn't a remote role. So if you're asking for a remote job, the answer is no. But if you're looking to come in and be a part of a team where you're going to learn and you're going to grow and you're going to actually be able to drive some innovation, then we're the company.
Now tell us, have you been able to integrate AI into your engineering workflow to enhance productivity?
Yeah, we were an AI company back in 2019.
That was before AI was really AI, right?
Everyone was ever talking about it. And we have, our capability is driven by the fact that we have a lot of models, machine learning driven models, that we've organized around the data so that we can create these profiles, these individual profiles around skills. So a lot of that is AI driven.
Gotcha. And do you have a favorite tool you've integrated, like Windsurf or Cursor or
So
GitHub Copilot?
yeah, so we Copilot is what we're using predominantly, although we have been experimenting with others like Windsurfer and recently Cursor, actually. Yeah.
And it's pretty funny because anyone we say could be good, but then a next release of another one's going to come out that could has enhanced capabilities, and it's hard to keep up.
It is, and we've stuck with predominantly we use Copilot as a tool, and we've been using it quite a lot. It's great for optimizations and productivity. We definitely see the productivity improvement. You still have to have a human in the loop, though. Cursor is a good example of that. You could be working with it, and suddenly you've got this really great tool, and you then make one change, and the whole lot stops working. You don't understand why it's not working, and it won't tell you why it's not working. Or there's things like that, and then obviously it also just generates large volumes of code, which is great for optimizing or scaling down the road. So it's excellent for prototyping. That's what I think is it's going to be.
I am a believer that AI is not going to replace software engineers in my lifetime, I will say. I think it will change the role. I think it'll allow it to be much more productive. It might eliminate the number of people you need, but it's also going to create new roles that in order to make sure it's all being steered in the right direction.
I would concur. I've seen this since the 80s when the PCs arrived and when then the internet arrived, and there's always been the the doomsayers telling you that it's going to blow up the industry, everything's going to change, and it's going to be for the worse. And actually, in all of those transformations, it's actually...
Well, don't you remember, in 1999, December 31st, the world was going to end because the old mainframe COBOL codes didn't have that extra 2 digits for the year?
I remember when they told me that the PC was going to kill the mainframe. Well, we still have the mainframe today.
And I think that's the main thing keeping IBM afloat. But now we're aging ourselves, Kai, and we're going to lose our audience. There are a bunch of old guys talking. As CTO in 2025, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
That is a good question. I think the biggest challenge is for me is if I look at it from an AI perspective, I think it's this idea of how do we leverage AI in a responsible way. There's a lot of risk that everyone talks about, but I think there's also a tremendous opportunity around it. So if we can find a way to balance the risk and the governance within AI, it will set us up on a path for some of the transformations that you and I were just talking about. So I think that's important. And then the other one is we spoke a little bit about it, but it's the talent side of it. I think the equation is, particularly in the market today, people are going to have to change the way they work. People are going to have to learn these new skills. They're going to have to learn these new tools. And to a large degree, there's going to be some aspects of the demographic in our society that are going to find that adjustment really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, it's going to happen. And I think there's this next generation that are coming up, the Gen Z and the Gen ZAs, and how they look at information today versus how we've looked at it. They're so much more nimble. They're so much more enlightened about looking at data, playing with these tools that are out there. And we have to find a way to bring them into the organizations like ours so that we can take advantage of those skills and those capabilities to meet the demand of the moment around AI.
It's interesting, Kai, because a lot of younger engineers that are a couple years out of college, it's been very hard for them to get jobs. And a lot of them I see that are getting jobs are put on projects that might have a government component or some type of thing that's prohibiting them from using AI as part of their role. I mean, an engineering organization can only use AI if the engineering leadership builds it into the processes.
That's right.
And as I talk with these young engineers, I'm like, so what are you doing to stay on top of it? They're like, oh, I'm not. I'm like, pounding my head, like, you have got to, at nights and weekends, start your own projects, build things in AI, stay on top of this, because you will become obsolete if you don't. And, especially where it's government or federal or state contracts that have certain restrictions where they just can't or won't use it. It's important for engineers to stay on top of it.
Well, so let's look at the government and the frameworks, right? FedRAMP. I think it's really just a tool for keeping the existing vendors in rather than allowing new vendors to come in. And that regulation, that constraint has to be changed because, let's be honest, and we'll be topical right now, if there's one thing that the war in the Ukraine taught us, it is that the models of warfare have changed dramatically, and it's not the models that we're right now building for. So if that's the sort of, if you look at it from that strategic perspective, the same lessons can be applied to government work. The same lessons can be applied to the industry side of things. The world is changing. It's changing a lot faster than I think some of us realize. And if you're not prepared to put the effort in to learn and stay on top of it and continually drive your understanding of what those changes mean and how you adjust for them, you will be one of the victims rather than one of the people who get the opportunity.
Well said. Well said. All right, I'm going to do some quick fire questions to you. What's your favorite part of the job of being a CTO?
People. Just bringing people together and seeing how they can work together and blossom and ultimately succeed together.
All right. What's the hardest part of your job as a CTO?
People.
Make up your mind, Kai.
No, human beings are messy, so you have to constantly find. The hardest thing I think to being a CTO is there's this myth that the CTO is really the guy who's just a top engineer who can write the most code. Actually, that's not true. And there's this way of trying to help people understand that we're here to influence strategy and bridge technology with the business. So our job is more about narrative negotiation and nuance as it is about the architecture and the software and the technology that's behind it.
I would agree. The CTO is the guy that has to justify to non-technical stakeholders, executives, CFOs.
And as soon as you walk in, and as soon as you walk in as the CTO, the first thing they're thinking about is, can you fix my laptop? And it's like, oh, hang on a second.
Why don't you call the CIO for that, maybe, not exactly. The CTO? So the resilience it takes to be a CTO is pretty amazing, as you have so many aspects of your role well beyond knowing how to architect and lead teams. You were telling me an interesting story before the show about resilience that, if you wouldn't mind sharing, I think listeners will love that.
So one of my hobbies is mountaineering, and I love being out in the mountains. And obviously that in itself.
Did you call that mountaineering?
It's mountaineering, yeah.
Okay.
So I love alpiniste style mountaineering, which is you pack light and you climb and you go in fast and get your summit.
You are clearly a well-traveled worldwide citizen.
Or a lunatic. One
of the two.
But a few years ago, I think the story we're talking about, it was 2016. I went climbing here in the North Cascades, and we did a what we call a sunset climb on a peak called Shahali. And we're climbing up, and we got to the top, and we saw the sunset, and it was great. And then we were rappelling down, and I was the last one coming down. And as I came down, by now it was getting a little dark, and I was on this little overhang. And because of the shadow, I didn't realize the wall was back here. So when I bounced out here, I was expecting it here, and it wasn't. And the rope caught here and accelerated me into the back of the wall. It was very painful on my left leg, and I thought, I've sprained it. So anyway, I finished the rappel, got down, got to the campsite, which was about 1.5 miles walking, and it was painful, doable. And I thought, I'll walk out the next day 5 miles. Woke up the next morning, leg was blown up, and I was like, this is not going to work. And I tried, and it wasn't going to work. So I got helicoptered off and got to the hospital, and they informed me that I'd busted my upper tibia in 3 places. So, the key is you've got to get back to base camp.
Well, and that's the perfect analogy for being a CTO is you're going to get hit, you're going to get kicked, you got to fight through it. So I think that's a great story. Kai, I really appreciate you getting uncensored with us today. You brought up some great points. Excited to see what the next chapter of AstrumU is going to bring to the market. Any final shout outs or advice for tech leaders you'd like to give?
Anticipate that things are going to change and enjoy the journey.
Awesome. Kai, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin, CEO, author, and builder of over 30 ventures, all powered by one thing, custom software. Stay bold and keep building, everyone. Thank you.